me get my... Good afternoon, everyone. It is a wonderful Friday afternoon, and welcome to this webinar for today. My name is Themba Mdletshe, and I will be chairing this session. And thank you for attending. This week, today, our topic is technical assistance in soliciting private sector investment to boost tourism development in nature conservation. And our presenter is none other than Lindokuhle Hlatshwayo. And maybe before I talk a bit on his profile, as I said, my name is Themba Mdletshe. I'm a senior project advisor in the Transaction Advisory Services and PPP unit. And our presenter is Lindokuhle Hlatshwayo, who is also a senior project advisor for business development, tourism, and ICT within the Transaction Advisory Services and PPP unit. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce honors in economics from the University of the Western Cape, and he is a certified PPP professional, certified by APMG International, and he also has a number of other certificates. He's been advising on PPPs for the past 17 years on all spheres of government, including public entities. He has advised on a number of PPPs for tourism development, and he has addressed a number of conferences around the country and neighboring SADC countries. And without further ado, I'll now hand over to Lindokuhle to take us through his presentation. Maybe just a second before I do that, may I kindly request that we all mute our microphones in order to avoid feedback, and that we have about our scheduled time is until 3:15, but generally we reserve the first 45 minutes for the actual presentation, and then the last leg would be for questions. And I would also encourage our colleagues and guests to use the chat box whenever they feel like they want to address some issues or ask questions. But generally, at the end of the presentation, we will then have a chance to ask questions. Over to you, Mr. Hlatshwayo.
Thank you very much, Themba. And good afternoon, colleagues, and also our guests. I've seen some of the colleagues that I've worked with from different organizations that have joined us. Thank you very much for that support. I see from GTAC in Gauteng, there's a representation there, as well as I think I'm also expecting to also have the TAs, who are the transaction advisors of this project that I'm going to be talking to you about, who will join us. So maybe just to kickstart everything before I load my presentation, will be a disclaimer. I would love to give you the information, the actual information of the proposals that we receive, or the proposal that we received and the proposal that the private party has submitted. But due to the sensitivity of some of that information, I will not be able to give you that intimate information, but I will give you I will censor the information that I'm giving you today, but it will give you an understanding in terms of where we are coming from with regards to this project. And what I would want to highlight mostly is not really the process, but the processes that happened on the project, which are things that do happen, which in projects, and how we have tried to overcome some of those projects. So I will switch off my video and then share my presentation. Okay. Chair, you can confirm if you can see it.
Very clear.
Thank you very much. So my topic is on the technical assistance in soliciting private sector investment to boost tourism development in the nature conservation. And this is an area where it's a very contested area between the tourists, development professionals, or the tourism development professionals, as well as the conservation professionals. And in that case, the conservation professionals do not want anything to happen in the nature conservation area. They don't want anything. So the tourism guys, they want to bring in people. Now that's a contestation that is there. How do you then have to balance those two? And also the issue of the budgeting that also comes with the mandate of conservation. Now, as we all know, that budgets have been shrinking all along since the past couple of years. And now it also then opened up an opportunity again to the tourism development individuals to say, look, guys, we can still conserve and then showcase what we have, but we need to then try and find ways of how we can then support this conservation in terms of budgets that made available and the revenues that we can create to support this. So the project that I will be talking to you about will be a project that we have done in Mpumalanga. So this is the table of contents that I will be taking you through, but it's a project that we have done in Mpumalanga, which is the God's Window Skywalk development. And it followed the tourism toolkit, which is the one that I'm talking to. And the tourism toolkit was developed in 2005, which started in 2004 and came into effect in 2005. And various stakeholders were involved in the development of that document, from the government side as well as the private sector side. All those that are involved in the tourism space were consulted, as well as the conservation, so that we make sure that we do not destroy in the name of bringing in tourism in the nature reserves. And then also what we had realized then was that the PPP manual that is in place, as well as the standardized PPP provisions, could not be summarily used for tourism development or tourism PPP project, because it's mainly biased towards large infrastructure, as well as those that are unitary based kind of projects. And now when you look at the tourism sector, you're looking at the project. If we say a project is big, a project is starting from 20 million rands of, in fact, the toolkit says any project that starts from 10 million rands going up, it's big. So you can then understand, when you're looking at the large infrastructure that we talk about, we're talking about billion rands, 500 million upwards. Those are the kinds of numbers that you can talk about. But when you're talking tourism, 10 million rand upward, it's a large amount.
I just want to show hands or input from my colleagues in the meeting. From the
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. May I remind colleagues to just please mute your sound, mute your microphones. Otherwise, I don't think we would want to listen to private conversations, and there's some feedback that is coming on. So please just mute your microphones and then listen in. Thank you so much. And sorry about that, Lindo.
Thank you, Themba. And then the main idea behind the toolkit was is to boost this sector in terms of private sector investment in the tourism space and create the much needed employment that we all know that the tourism sector can create. And now government says, look, we have this nice nature reserve, we've got this gems that we have, and we need to showcase them somewhere, somehow. And then let's find a way of how we can do it, given the shortage of money in the fiscus. How can we then invite the private sector to come in? And then that's when the development of this tourism toolkit then came into effect. And now, how is the process then it's undertaken? This is the PPP project cycle in the tourism space. What it then says that in phase one, what you need to do is you need to then develop your own or prepare your own strategic plan for commercialization, which will then inform all the projects that are going to be coming in. Because when you're doing that commercialization strategy, it identifies all the products and the projects that you can have in that institution, and then you can package them in some kind of projects that can be later then be issued outside. So once you have done that, and then you need to apply for each and every project that you want to pursue. You can apply. You need to apply to Treasury for registration of that project. And then you get a unique number, which will identify the project, and then you get now into to starting with the project. But then the other thing that is also required is that you also need to get the transaction advisors involved on board to assist you now with drafting the pre-feasibility study, as well as the feasibility study, and assisting with the procurement. One of the main reasons for that pre-feasibility study, as you can see there, which is a requirement, is that you need to then identify or motivate which route is going to take. So there is a large cap route and a small cap route, and the small cap route is an institutional approval that needs to be provided, and the large cap route is a Treasury approval. An institutional approval, you get an institutional approval once you have applied for Treasury exemption. And Treasury exemptions are mainly likely going to be provided or given or granted on small projects that are less than 10 million rands, and any project that is more than 10 million rand will be then categorized as a large cap road project. So there are some institutions like your Sun Parks that have already established themselves in terms of this process, and they do get exemptions even on the large projects that they are doing. But mainly there are some critical issues that we also need to manage in providing that exemption. We need to understand the experience of the institution in carrying on the processes that are required. So the board of that institution will be the one that is providing the approvals instead of Treasury approvals. But if it's a large cap, then Treasury will be the one that is providing those. So mainly those kinds of projects are issue-based kinds of projects, like your hiking or scuba diving or zip line. But when you start then talking about accommodation, which will include conferencing, which will also include restaurants and curio shops, then that makes the project to be a large cap project. And then in that case, Treasury would also want to be involved, and we are also going to be involved, so that then we guide the process because of the risk profile of that project, as well as the potential cost of the project and the investment that is required. We also need to make sure that whatever is done, we are there to assist the institution and providing that assistance. So that will be the project cycle that we need to follow. And those are the approvals that are provided for feasibility study, procurement documents, value for money, and the last one will be for the final terms of the PPP agreement that will be provided by Treasury, or it's an institutional approval. Now, as you can see in terms of this project cycling, then each and every project, because this is a regulated process, each and every project needs to go through the same process. You need to develop your feasibility study, get Treasury approval 1, then go to procurement, submit for Treasury approval 2A and 2B, and later your negotiated PPP agreement, which is the final Treasury approval that needs to be provided. So all projects that are done needs to follow the same process. Now, let me go into the case study project that I want to talk about today, which is the God's Window Skywalk project in Mpumalanga, and sponsored by which is the procuring institution, which is the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency. And the project was conceptualized around 2009, and then where we then got involved, it was around 2014 actually, 2014, when it was indicated that it is one of the flagship projects of the then premier of the province, and IDC came on board to assist with the funding of the feasibility study, and also the CPAs, which are the community communal CPA. What is CPA? Why am I forgetting CPA now? Okay, I'll remember that CPAs, Communal Property Association. Yes. Then, because the development site, which is the Bladder Canyon Nature Reserve, is a reclaimed land by the communities, so it's a communal land, but because it's declared as the nature reserve, then the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency is the managing authority. So there needs to be the cooperation between the two entities for any development that is done, and the support of the CPAs is crucial in this case. And then they also then involved the assistance of the transaction advisor, which is Hosting Projects, who was then came in to assist with the development of the feasibility study up until now, at the end, where we're negotiating the PPP agreement, as well as signing of that PPP agreement. These are the stakeholders that were involved in the project. One, which is the main one, which is MTPA, the Mpumalanga Parks and Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency, which is the sponsoring entity. And then they then came in on board with their transaction advisors, which is Hosting Project. And then the CPAs were represented by their nominated representatives, because there are 4 CPAs that are there in Bladder Canyon Nature Reserve. There are 4 of them, and all of them were represented in the project team, as well as the mother department of MTPA, which is the Economic Development and Tourism department. And then we were also part of the project in terms of guiding now with regards to the process, together with the provincial treasury, in guiding the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency in developing this project. And then later on, we then had to, through the procurement process, involve the private sector, who then submitted their proposals on the project that we had issued out. So this, I think this is what was achieved throughout the year. The years since the registration of the project up until now, were in last year, where the PPP agreement was signed with the preferred bidder. Now, as you can see, with regards to this, the feasibility study was approved, or the Treasury approval 1 was granted around 20 2017 October, and also in 2019 it was Treasury Approval 2A. Now someone would ask, what was happening here in 2018? Nothing happened. Here you are also dealing with a very complicated in a space where you also need to manage individuals as well as to manage the expectations, and also articulate those expectations, and it must be known what you're expecting as an entity, CPA, as well as from our side. So in 2018, that's where there were some issues that came up, and then the CPAs then withdrew their support and went on their own to look for the private party, and which in terms of the law, they are allowed to do that because that's their land. And the only thing that MTPA could do once they have done that is to make sure that they give them the guidelines and the norms and standards in terms of the development that can be done in that space. And if there is any damage to the environment, they must then give them a process with regards to how it can be remedied, and all of those norms and standards that are required in the nature reserve. But then again, I will talk to that later, what was the outcome of that. Then we came back in 2019, and then at some point in 2020, as you can see, 2020 here, it's the pandemic also came in to knock us off again, off rail. But the most important thing is the consistency and focus with regards to what you want to achieve as an institution, and then striving towards that. So what did the feasibility study then discover? We then did a feasibility study which then indicated that with regards to the assumptions that were made, because this is a project that has never been done here in the country. It is nowhere in the country. You only find it somewhere in America, and I think somewhere in China, where you might find a similar project like this. Now, we then had to do some kind of work together with the transaction advisors. They then had to do some kind of assimilation and then give us an indicative number with regards to how much would be the investment to this. And then the design and construction was estimated to be around 86.6 million rands, and the potential revenues around like 67.3 in year one. And those would be the operations and maintenance cost in the same year. And then more importantly, I think would be the issue of the PPP fee that we required. This is the minimum fee that was required by MTPA, which is a 1.4 million rand for the project, and which is per annum, and then a variable PPP fee, which is a 6%. Why do we use a variable fee? We're using a variable PPP fee so that we don't have to renegotiate when things are good, and we see, and we don't want to hear any issues of complaints that these guys are just killing it and we are not benefiting on this upsurge that they are experiencing, and the revenue, the money that they are making, we are not getting a sense. So this variable fee is based on the turnover of that entity. So if they are doing well, then we compare the variable fee to the minimum PPP fee that we required. If the minimum PPP fee is less, then we drop the minimum PPP fee, and then we take the maximum amount that we can get, which will be from the variable PPP fee, which is the 6%. Now, what was the proposals that the range of the proposals that we received? The proposals that we received, they were, in terms of the design and construction, they ranged between 300 up to almost 500,000 rand, 500 million rands in terms of the construction. So the concept design that they had was going to cost around that amount, including the shops that are going to be built there, and also the paving and making sure and the operation. So that is basically what the range between 300 and 500 million rands, which our numbers were really conservative in that case. And then in terms of the number of years that we eventually agreed with the private party, it was around 25 years that we provided them, and the construction period is the same, which is 2 years. So that's basically the achievement that was done. And I think what I need to indicate also is the issue of the community benefit, the CPAs. In our request for proposal, we had indicated that the CPAs would need to take up at least 10% of equity in the project. Someone would say, but 10% is nothing. It's nothing if you do have 10% of, let's say, 500 million. So you need to come up with that amount. But now, as we know that our communities do not have such amount lying around. And then we had then make it an optional that to say, look, we would like you as a private party to come up with a total amount that is required for the project, the total project cost, and then allocate that 10% to the community, and then they will pay back in a percentage form of the dividends that they will receive from the project. And to our surprise, the proposal that eventually became the preferred bidder indicated that they are going to give the community that 10% for free, without paying a cent to the community, which is also one of the benefits. Sometimes we think that the private sector is there to kill. It's there to milk government, but in some cases it might not be the case, as well as community, because they also looked at it as part of their social responsibility, kind of an initiative to say, look, we will also want to contribute towards this community that we're going to work with, so that then we can solidify our relationship with the community that we're going to be working with throughout the years. So the risk, in terms of the risk profile, I think the bulk of the risks were transferred to the private party. As you can see, financing, the supporting infrastructure, design and construction, maintenance, operations, as well as the market and demand volume. In this case, we are saying you are not going to come to MTPA and say, yeah, but no, people are no longer coming, are not coming now to our establishment. You are not marketing it enough. So the marketing and all of those demand creating activities are still the responsibility of the private party to do. And they need to do it. And with regards to the political, we can't give it to the private party. That's what we need to manage as government, because that's the risk that we can manage as government, which is the political part. And then the force majeure one is the nature. It can happen and without anyone's fault. So we need to share, but in mainly we do take a knock as government most, because the infrastructure is created for us and it remains with us even after that earthquake or whatever nature of God that would have happened. Now, this is the site that we are talking about, which is in Leyde Canyon Nature Reserve. And the design concept of the Skywalk, it's this one, where we are trying to showcase exactly what is it that we were thinking about, or that was being conceptualized and the development. So as you can see in my next slide, these are the design reference designs, so that then we will be able to try and see how we can cost to, so that then we can cost. So you will be able to walk around this area and view the whole area, the God's window. And some people would sometimes say, if you look close enough, you might even see Maputo from where you are. And I'm not sure how true is that. I've tried, but I haven't managed. Maybe my eyesight is not as good as with other people, but yeah. So this is exactly what MTPA had in mind, and also what then the preferred bidder also is going to try and simulate, which might be more or less the same, but not exactly, because we have provided them with this design concept, but we did not make it mandatory to them to say this is exactly what we want. They also need to show their creativity to making sure that at least this will become an iconic tourist attraction site, and also adding into the developments around the Blade River Canyon Nature Reserve, which is your gorge on the cable car on the other side. So this is in the tourist line. If you know Mpumalanga very well, they say it's a panoramic, site where you get your Macmac River Falls, your potholes, that site of Mpumalanga, which is one of those beautiful places that we have in the country after Kruger National Park. Now, it sounds very nice, but we do have challenge. We did have challenges, like I indicated earlier on, that the land, it's CPAs owns it, and also we had experienced some delays when the support from the landowners was withdrawn, and they wanted to go ahead and approach, when they were approached by a private party to develop this project. And we then had to sit back and say, look, guys, MTPA came to us and say, but the community say 1, 2, 3. And then I said to them, look, there's nothing you can do. Let's let them go ahead with that process and see what we can do. If they need our help, they will come back, and then we'll continue with our processes. And yeah, eventually it happened that they had to come back. And the reason why they had to come back was, one, the private party that approached them could not raise funding on the basis that they are only talking to the community, because all the funders wanted to know what is government involvement in their contract with the community. And when they indicated none, and then nothing happened. Until then, the CPAs came back to MTPA and indicated, look, guys, we are still interested in going on with you, and can we continue with the process that you were taking us through? It looks very long, and then some people will then lose confidence in the process. But that's exactly the beauty of the process, is that it is structured in a way that everyone's interest will be protected, because you don't want to jump into a 30-year agreement without applying your mind. And then later on, in those 30 years, you will be solving issues and problems instead of enjoying what you have developed. So that's the main idea behind following the process. And then also, they had then to be included on all the processes again that we had to do. And then there were some claims that came up with regards to the project itself, that MTPA was taking someone's ideas and they want to be part of the private party side. in developing this project, and we had to deal with that, and it delayed us for almost 6 months. And then we sorted that one, and then the copyright issues with regards to the images that were in the environmental impact assessment. And those are some of the issues. And the other one is the changes on MTPA side with regards to the accounting officers. I think there were 2 changes before I came in of accounting officers. And then the last one, I think his contract just came to an end recently, who is the one that managed to take us through up until the signing of the agreement. So in that process, it was me and the transaction advisors that were there from day one up until that point. Most of the people had changed. The advisor, the project officer was also changed in the process. And then also the project team, some of the members were brought in, some were taken out. So it was that kind of, the only constant factors that were there. It was us from GTAC and as well as the provincial treasury and the transaction advisors. Fortunately, they did not fire the transaction advisors when they come in, the new accounting officers, but they then had to understand what is happening and how and what is needed and try to see how they can assist in moving the project forward. So those are some of the difficulties that you will experience, as well as the lack of institutional experience in driving the PPP tourism. Because now in this case, you are not using government money to procure something, but you are saying you are inviting someone to use their money to procure or to build a government infrastructure that they are going to operate for a specific period, but then you are creating an opportunity in a reserved space where you have the right as a government entity to say, we are not going to have another Lindokuhle providing a zip line while we have you here providing the same zip line services. So that's the opportunity that we are, it's being provided when following the process. And then also the captive market with regards to the visitors that come to the centers or the nature reserve to look at what what is being conserved in that nature reserve, whether it's animals or flowers, all those things that are being conserved in those nature reserve. So that's basically the opportunity that we are creating. And also the issue of budgeting for the advisory service, it also came into effect in this case, where monies were not enough, and they had to go back and look at how they can raise that kind of funding so that they can continue with the project. And also the document management became an issue because of the inconsistency with regards to who is managing the project and the changes with regards to project officers and some other senior managers. But then again, the other delay was that of COVID, and also the issue of optimism bias, where the community itself was saying, no, look, you can't tell us that this will be the kind of a project. It needs to be a massive project, a very big one, because we've got the numbers. We know that people will come in and flock because it's their project. So sometimes you think the best of it, and also which might not go along with the numbers. So that's basically what then happened. So those were the challenges. And then what are then the lessons that we've learned? Proactive engagement with the landowners in explaining what is going to be the process and how they are going to be involved in the process itself is very much important and is crucial. And they do not have to be left outside in any of the discussions, because immediately you leave them outside, then they think that you are conspiring against them. So that's basically what we the lesson that we have learned out of this. And then there are also the co-management agreements that are in place in most of the nature conservation areas, where between the nature conservation institution and the community, but they are not speaking to the project development or product developments or these kinds of developments in this, because they are not talking to how the cost will be shared in managing the conservation area, how will be the cost being shared in inviting the private party, as well as the revenues that will be provided as per the concession fees that will be received. So all of those things are not expressed, and also the right that is provided to the conservation institution to develop on behalf of the community. It's not expressed in the current co-management agreement. So those are some of the things that they need. We have thought that needs to be done, and also the process of how they manage unsolicited proposals, because sometimes you'll find that there are proposals that are submitted, but there are no responses to those proponents. So those are some of the small things, but very important to do. Whether you are considering or not considering, you just have to indicate that if it's in your plans, the project that they are submitting, it's in your plans, indicate to them that we are already planning around that project and we will be coming out to the market on a specific time. You can wait for that period, and then you can submit your proposal, so that then there is that kind of interaction between yourself and the proponents, as well as in getting Treasury approvals. I think on that one, we did manage to manage. The only ones that I think they took a little bit of time will be your feasibility study, as well as your negotiated PPP agreement. And granted that they need to take as much time, because those are the crucial stages of the project, where the feasibility study needs to indicate whether the project is feasible, there's value for money, risk transfer, and the affordability part of it. And then now you have to then take all of those things and look at the negotiated PPP agreement, whether is it expressing what the feasibility study intended, and how is that reflected on the agreement at the end of the day. So that's basically why then it has to take some time. But in terms of that, I think we that has been managed very well from the Treasury side. And then the last one would be the contract management team that needs to be involved. And in most cases, what happens is that the project officer is turned into a contract manager, so that then you manage the institutional memory, or the institutional, yes, the institutional, you keep it within the project. So once I'm involved up until procurement, and then I negotiate the agreement, and then later on I became the manager, the contract manager of that agreement. I know exactly what was negotiated and why that certain decisions were taken. So I'll be in a position to manage the private party much better than someone that will come in cold at the end of the procurement phase, to come in and manage a contract that he or she has no idea what is happening on it. And then also, I think the last one will be that one of ensuring that you involve the experienced transaction advisors. Like I indicated earlier on, that we ended up being the last, or in fact, the longest serving members of the committees, or of the project members or project team that was established, because we were the only one that never changed since the inception of the project, but everyone else had was changed. So having that kind, and also in terms of how they manage the documentations, because at some point you will ask for a certain document in the institution, they will tell you they don't have that document. Then at least when you go back to the advisors, they might then come up with that document that you are requiring from them to assist you. So on the nutshell, that will be the project that I'm talking to, which is in Mpumalanga, and I hope you will at some point, once everything has been done, you will make time and visit and to see how is it performing, and I'm looking forward to it. And I've seen some on some YouTube videos where there are some similar projects where people are very scared to walk because it's a glass. And I would want to experience that right here at home and see how it feels. Thank you very much, Chair, for the time.
Well, wonderful. What a wonderful presentation. I must say that even I continue to learn as much as I am in the same unit, but this is really interesting information. Colleagues and our guests, if I may now open up time for Lindokuhle to take questions or any comment that you would want to put to him. Maybe we should start with what is on the chat box. I don't know, Lindo, if you can see what's on the chat box, but the first comment or question is from Elaine. What is the percentage of your PPP projects generally that have community involvement? Communities perhaps bring legitimacy or even greater job creation potential.
Okay. Wonderful one. Thank you very much, Elaine, on that one. I might not have exact percentage, but what then, in fact, even the toolkit advises is that on each and every project that we do, we must make sure that there is community involvement from employment, service provision or providing some certain services like your cleaning, as well as laundry, your garden services, and your maybe milk, provision of milk. So some of those services needs to be sourced within the community where the project is. And that's because you don't want to isolate the community where the project is situated. And then once there are people who are coming in there and they are not benefiting, you will suffer the consequences. The certain Lindokuhles will come up from the woodwork to help themselves with your tourists, and that's one thing that you don't want. And once that happened, that's the death of that establishment. So once the community is involved, and then the Lindokuhles will be cheering them on and inviting them to come into their houses and making them feel at home once they are there, because they know once that person sleeps there, it's my parents' company that will be washing the laundry of those guests that are going to that guest house. And it's my sister's company that is cleaning there. And it's my brother's company that is manning the lawns and making sure. And my neighbor is providing your tour guiding services to those guests. So those are some of the services that we insist they must be done there on all of this. And then with regards to I think in all projects that we have, there is community involvement, because most of them, they've got that land claim on some of these projects and some of these nature reserves.
Thank you, Lindo. And then we have Paul. Paul has an interesting one here, and I think it's linked with Elaine's follow-up question. So I'll read them both so that we may probably draw a link between the two. Paul says, looks like a showcase of how not to do PPPs. 6 stakeholders, only one of which is the private sector. Multiple changes in project or accounting officers, 5+ years, including 10 months for COVID. What scope for putting in place one specialist PPP agency to manage these transactions to which all public stakeholders delegate their authority? Don't know of many serious bidders who will hang around in the face of such uncertainty, unaccountability, and risk. And then Elaine, I think she was following up on her earlier question. Also, who represents the community? That is politicians, community leaders. This could bring its own challenges. Hence, I say, I think these two are almost related, or related, in fact, because they talk to the stakeholder complexities.
Yeah. Let me start with Elaine. Elaine's question, which is who represent the community. They are represented by their own leaders. They form a CPA, which is a community property association, and then elect their own leadership. So the leadership that is elected by the community is the one that is going to be involved now in the project itself. And then what we did, we then decided to say, look, we have 4 of you guys, but you need to give us 2 people that will be involved in the project team, because we can't have a big project team. So they then had to allocate who within those 4 within those representatives will be the one that will take up the seat on the project team. And then on this one, on Paul's question, look, I think if we look at this thing and then we just look at the time frame part, some of the activities that happened from inception up until you do the feasibility study, that's an internal assessment that is happening, which is the work that we do internally without the involvement of the private sector. So the time that we take to do that, it might be 12 to 18 months to do that exercise. And then once we go out on procurement, we can't give them 21 days to provide us with the proposals. So we need to give them enough time. I think we provided, I think, 90 days, which is 3 months for bidders to do their own, of which we took 18 months, we took 12 months, we take 12 months to do some of those exercises, the feasibility study, but we give them 90 days to do their own proposals. So that's basically what we are doing. And then once you have that, then there is an evaluation period that you also need to factor in. And then once you factored in that one, there are approval processes that needs to take place internally in the institution as well as the Treasury approval. So the institution will have to approve internally the submission, that it needs to be submitted to Treasury once they have approved it, and then Treasury will then look at it. So those are the time frames that you can. We will be very much happy to do this project in as quick as possible. But then again, the due diligence part also need to be taken into consideration. You rush the processes, then the processes will rush you when you are implementing.
Thank you, Lindo. And then we have, I think it is Sudhir. And Sudhir, if I'm butchering your name, I beg your pardon. Sudhir is saying, oh, why do I sense a bit of pride and that is peppered with a little bit of good jealousy here. Well, you can't compare KZN with anybody else, Sudhir. We are on a league of our own. Anyway, he says,
and I'm from.
He says, very interesting, thank you. However, you mentioned Kruger and Mpumalanga parks, nothing about the beauty of Ezemvelo ones in KZN. On a serious note, the aspect of commercialization needs to be shortened. Not sure how, maybe looking at the delegations to the board being increased from 10 million to about 50 million. I think that is a comment. Let me read through. There's Dinga who says, and also CPAs operate under a specific legal framework, at least theoretically. That said, there's always contestations within community structures due to eco-political, if ever there is such a word, reasons. In structuring any project plan, ignoring making provisions for these will be ignorant. Exactly. The risk is just inherent in all community-based projects.
I 100% agree, Dinga. In fact, it looks like you have worked with the CPAs. They are an elected structure from the community, and they can be taken out at any point during the process. And it can become very complicated when things happen. Fortunately, from our side, the structures that were elected, they were there up until the end. So there were no issues that much, except the issue when they withdrew their support during the process. But otherwise, you are very much correct. I agree with you. It is a very, very difficult space to work in. And then Sudhir, I will talk about the KZN Ezemvelo once we are done with the processes that we are busy with Abo Babu Mkwena down there in KZN. And we'll have a special session that will talk to them. Thank you.
Thanks. I see a hand from Sbusiso from GTAC. Sbusiso, please unmute yourself and talk to us.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just one question. If I may confirm, Lindo, is that based on your current experience, you would say it is safe to actually get the CPA involved from the conceptual stage, right from when the project starts, so that there may be no resentment halfway in the process. If you can confirm that it's safe to start involving them at the conceptual stage as part of the project team. And the next question, what then happens to the area which is claimed by more than one community, which probably the other claimant community may not have been in the same stage as the other? You find other claimants at the advanced stage, but you find others still at another level of, the finalization of the claim. As much as it is valid, it may not be in the same, stages. Do you still involve those? How do you deal with such? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sbusiso. I think in this case, let me, on the first one, it is very much important to you to involve them from the beginning. Now, I think my answer to that one will also include the response to the second question. It is very much important to include them from the onset, because that's their land. So in the case where they have claimed, but they have not yet been given all those certificates to say, yes, you are rightful owner of this, it's the support that you will want. And then you indicate to the community, to those communities, this is the intention of what we want to do. as a department, we want to develop this space, and we believe that you are the one, we are also claiming this area as part of the land claim. And then now, are you in support of this development that we are doing? So once then you get their support to say, yes, we are in support. And then you also indicate how then they are going to then benefit once everything is sorted and they are given all those documents that proclaims that they are the rightful landowners of that property. And then in the process of, in terms of the dividends and all of those things, that's where the department then will come in on their behalf. You're going to stand on their behalf. But those ones that have already gone up until the stage where they have been given the papers and the certificates to say that this is their, those are the ones that you need to involve, because you don't want to involve others and into a project and then you find that the outcome becomes a different outcome. So you're going to have to stand in on their behalf as an institution, those ones that are still at an early stage of the process of claiming back the land. But those ones that are already up there, you need to involve them up front and then also indicate and get into that co-management agreement. Sign that co-management agreement where they are indicating that they are giving you the right to commercially develop the area or the place on their behalf, and they will then indicate what exactly they want. And then all of those things that they say they want, you're going to then include them on the final PPP agreement that you're going to sign with the potential private party. We call that kind of co-management, we call that agreement is the community public-private partnership, where you are reflecting all the needs of the community in your agreement with the private party. So you will be standing in there as the middleman between the community and the private party. I hope that responds to your questions.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindo. And we have Tabiso, who says, can a private individual help initiate a PPP? If so, how does one go about it?
Can a private individual help initiate a PPP? So, okay, you can, and that you will submit as an unsolicited proposal, which will then be handled as an unsolicited proposal framework. There's a framework that has been developed. One of those requirements will be your project needs to be unique, innovative, and you need to be the only person that can do that work. And also, if there's a patent rights, you are the only holder of that patent rights. And also, if you are the supplier, you are the only person that is supplying it in the country. So those are some of the requirements. But if you are saying you're going to build a lodge in Drakensberg, that there's nothing unique about that. So if we issue out a call for anyone to come in and build a lodge in the Drakensberg, you will get 5, 7, 10 proposals. So then that means competition. And if we ignore that process, we will then be going through the courts, because all those ones that we're going to submit, they are going to interdict the process and say, but we are never given an opportunity to also participate in this tender. So yes, you can, but then it will need to satisfy certain criteria in terms of the unsolicited proposal framework.
Thanks, Lindo. We are rounding up with Matthew Mukwena. I think this is the Mukwena you were talking about earlier on. But anyway, he says, perhaps not to comment exclusively on this particular project, but in dealing with local government finance projects, what I have learned is that during the initiation phase, where the business case of feasibility and project charter is completed, it is critical not only to identify the stakeholders, but to clearly articulate their roles and to set up the governance mechanisms for managing the project. Mitigations for the assumptions and constraints also need to be adequately planned. I think with this one, we can round up for the day, Lindo.
Thank you very much. Yes, Bonge Babumkwen. I think you are 100% correct on this one, because it is very much important to identify stakeholders and also allocate the responsibility or the role that they need to play. Because sometimes some projects then gets delayed because I've allocated the responsibility to an entity that does not sit with that entity, and they will just ignore that the request that we are sending in, and we'll be waiting on the other side for their comments, but they are not in a space to make any comment on that specific issue that we would be requiring. So it is very much important to allocate even the role that they need to play, as well as whether they need to be part of the project team or one of those that you need to consult when you are still developing your project, because those that needs to be part of the project, they have a decision-making role, and those ones that you need to consult are those ones that you need to then indicate what is it that you are doing and how then is going to impact on them. So it is very much important. Thank you very much for that comment, Tiabo.
Thank you, Lindo. I don't see any other hands or any other message in the chat box. I shall then assume that our audience is quite happy with the content that has been presented. And with that, I see Tabiso is saying, no ways, brother, no ways. Tabiso, come back on, please.
Apologies. So we have a situation in my hometown where my tribe basically has this land of let's say around 22,000 hectares or so that we're trying to develop to create jobs for the village. Then the question I wanted to find out is, now there's some internal politics with the person leading it, and how can we verify or get information about these claims? Or verify them.
Okay, Lindo, be mindful, we have less than 5 minutes now.
Yeah, that's a very difficult one for me to respond to, because then it needs maybe some kind of work with regards to verification of those claims with the Department of Land Affairs, so that then you can know that you are really talking to the right individual. So from where we are sitting, we normally push that to the legal component of the TAs to say they need to then take up that due diligence when they are all doing their own due diligence, to make sure that they look up for in terms of the site itself, ownership, and then the endorsements and all of those things are very much important from the planning phase, from the beginning, so that then you identify all those pitfalls, the things that can make or break the project moving forward.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope this is the last one. Quickly, Kenny, please.
I'm forcing matters. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for these colleagues. You know, as you said yourself, Chair, we're learning something new every day when it comes to these, sort of these processes. One of the issues now here, I think, is something that might deserve a standalone session around, because we spoke about CPAs and so forth, around community preparation for development. Because I think we talk about project preparation, I think the most critical part here, when we talk about CPAs and so forth, is just preparing community for development, so that they are not misled, so that they are able to ask the right questions. so that they are able to appoint the right people into CPAs and so forth. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done just on preparing the communities themselves for development in their own areas. So I think it's a critical area when it comes to triple Ps and any other development that happens in these spaces. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Madlula. I think the passion just kicked out there. I don't know, Lindo, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, no, thank you, Kenny, on that one. I think what I can indicate with regards to community preparation, that's the space that we don't play in as bureaucrats. It's the space of our political principle, because we can't go to communities. Who are we that we can go to communities? It's our political principle that needs to play that role together with the CPA's leadership. I agree that there needs to be that kind of. So in most cases, when we do these kinds of work, we ignore that component where we would have to request our political principle to also engage the communities on the other side, parallel to what we are doing, so that at least it paves the way with regards to what exactly is going to be developed, and the community should be aware of what is going to happen. And some would also want to take up the opportunities that will come with the development. Thank you, Babu Mhlatshe.
Lindokuhle, thank you very much for that informative presentation. When I say we, I hope I'm speaking on behalf of everyone, that we really appreciate the information that you've just shared with us. And thank you to the organizers of these wonderful webinars, in particular, Kathleen Moses. Thank you so much. And lastly, as they say, last but not the least, what would a webinar of this nature be without our audience? Thank you for your attendance and thank you for your participation. I will now declare that the webinar has ended, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, colleagues. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.